I discovered my husband brought his secret girlfriend to our anniversary party, but when he introduced her as his colleague, I was already planning to introduce her to her own husband, who was standing right behind him. Before we dive back in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and if this story resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is something truly special I can't wait to share. The notification chimed on my phone at 8:47 p.m. on Saturday night, right in the middle of our 10th wedding anniversary celebration. A photo tagged on social media by my cousin Rachel from Millbrook. The image showed my husband, Trevor, laughing with a stunning redhead in an emerald green dress, their body language intimate and familiar in a way that made my stomach drop. The caption read, "Trevor and his lovely colleague Natalie at the Whitmore Anniversary Bash. Such a cute work friendship." Work friendship. I stared at the screen while conversations buzzed around me in our beautifully decorated backyard in Clearwater Heights. String lights twinkled overhead, casting warm glows on the faces of our 50 closest friends and family members. Everyone was celebrating our decade of marriage, raising glasses of champagne, sharing stories about Trevor and me. Meanwhile, my husband was across the yard with a woman I'd never heard him mention, looking more relaxed and genuinely happy than I'd seen him in months. I recognized her immediately from the photo, even though Trevor had never introduced us. She stood near the dessert table, elegant and confident, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her laugh carried across the yard as she chatted with our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson from Oakwood Lane. She looked completely at ease, as if she belonged here, as if she had every right to be celebrating my marriage anniversary. My hands remained steady as I tucked my phone back into my clutch. No trembling, no dramatic gasps. Instead, something cold and calculating settled in my chest. I began moving through the party with new eyes, watching Trevor's interactions with this Natalie person. The way he brought her a drink without being asked, how he subtly guided her away from certain groups of people, the careful distance he maintained in public while his eyes followed her constantly. This wasn't their first social event together. Their comfort level spoke of practice, of previous gatherings where they'd perfected this act of casual acquaintanceship. I thought back to Trevor's recent work events that I'd supposedly been too busy to attend. The quarterly dinners, the company picnics, the holiday parties where he claimed spouses weren't really expected. How many of those events had featured Natalie? I excused myself from a conversation with Trevor's college friends and walked toward the house, pulling out my phone to do what any suspicious wife would do in 2024, social media investigation. Natalie's profile was easy to find once I had her first name and face. Natalie Reeves, Senior Marketing Director at Stratford Dynamics, the same company where Trevor worked as Regional Sales Manager. Her Instagram told a story of professional success, world travel, and expensive tastes. But it was the subtle details that caught my attention. A coffee cup from Brewster's Cafe on Maple Street, the same place Trevor claimed to grab his morning coffee. A sunset photo from Riverside Park taken exactly 3 weeks ago, the same day Trevor said he was working late. A picture of a sophisticated cocktail from the Meridian Hotel bar posted last Tuesday when Trevor had texted me about an emergency client meeting. I scrolled back through months of her posts, building a timeline in my mind. The overlap was undeniable. Every supposed late work night, every weekend business commitment, every unexplained absence had a corresponding post from Natalie in the same locations around Clearwater Heights. But the most damning evidence came from a group photo posted by Stratford Dynamics just 2 weeks ago, their annual company retreat in Blue Ridge Mountains. There was Trevor in the back row, and there was Natalie, positioned carefully several people away, but both wearing matching conference t-shirts and identical smiles, the kind of smiles shared by people with a secret. I leaned against the kitchen counter, processing this information while party laughter drifted through the open windows. 10 years of marriage, a decade of building a life together, of supporting his career moves, of believing his explanations about demanding work schedules and difficult clients. How long had this been going on? How many lies had I swallowed while smiling and playing the supportive wife? The kitchen door opened and my sister Amanda walked in, carrying empty appetizer plates. "Great party, Jess. You really outdid yourself with the decorations." She paused, studying my face. "Everything okay? You look a little pale." "Just checking on the dessert schedule," I lied smoothly, slipping my phone back into my clutch, "making sure we have enough cake for everyone." Amanda nodded and headed back outside, but her comment about the guest count made me realize something important. I had planned this party for 50 people. I had personally written and sent every invitation, coordinated every RSVP, arranged every detail. Natalie Reeves was not on my guest list. So how exactly had she ended up at my anniversary party? I walked to the small desk in our breakfast nook where I kept party planning materials. The guest list, printed neatly in alphabetical order, confirmed what I already knew. No Natalie anywhere, which meant Trevor had invited her separately, probably told her it was a casual work gathering or company celebration. He'd brought his girlfriend to our anniversary party and was passing her off as a colleague to our friends and family. The audacity was breathtaking. The calculated deception was even worse. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a recent mistake. This was systematic betrayal, carefully orchestrated and flawlessly executed. Trevor had been living a double life with the confidence of someone who believed he was too smart to get caught. I returned to the party, moving through conversations with renewed purpose. Now I was watching everyone's interactions with Natalie, noting who seemed to know her and who was meeting her for the first time. Our mutual friend David from the neighborhood mentioned that Trevor had brought a, quote, work colleague to the barbecue at Willowbrook Community Center last month. My mother-in-law commented that she'd met a lovely young woman at Trevor's company picnic in September, someone who worked in marketing. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Trevor had been gradually introducing Natalie into our social circle, testing the waters, normalizing her presence. Tonight was just the boldest move yet, bringing her to our most intimate celebration and watching her charm our closest friends and family members. I found myself standing near the garden gate, observing Trevor and Natalie from across the yard. They were maintaining perfect professional distance, but their awareness of each other was constant. She laughed at something her friend Robert said, and Trevor's head turned immediately toward the sound. He handed someone a beer, but his eyes tracked her movement toward the appetizer table. They had the unconscious synchronization of people deeply familiar with each other's rhythms. My phone buzzed with another social media notification. This time, it was a photo posted by Trevor's coworker Jake showing a group shot from tonight's party. Trevor and Natalie weren't standing together, but the camera had caught them in an unguarded moment, sharing a look across the crowd that was unmistakably intimate. The kind of look that would be completely inappropriate between colleagues, but spoke volumes about their real relationship. I screenshotted the photo, adding it to the growing collection of evidence in my phone. Then I did something that surprised even me. I walked directly toward them, my smile bright and welcoming, my voice carrying clearly across the nearby conversations. "Natalie, isn't it? I don't think we've been properly introduced. I'm Jessica, Trevor's wife." I extended my hand warmly, watching her face carefully for any sign of guilt or discomfort. "Trevor's told me so much about his work colleagues, but I don't think he's mentioned you specifically. What department did you say you were in?" Her handshake was firm, her smile perfectly professional, but I caught the slight tightening around her eyes. "Marketing," she replied smoothly. "I work with Trevor on several regional campaigns. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Your home is beautiful." "Of course," I replied, my voice genuinely warm. "Any colleague of Trevor's is welcome here. Actually, I was just thinking how nice it would be for you to meet some of the other spouses. My friend Catherine over there, her husband works in marketing too. Small world, right?" Trevor stepped closer, his hand briefly touching my elbow. "Jess, I don't want to monopolize Natalie's evening. I'm sure she wants to mingle." "Absolutely," I agreed, still smiling. "In fact, I think I saw someone earlier who might know you. Let me see if I can find him."
I excused myself and walked toward the house, but instead of going inside, I circled around to the side yard where I spotted something interesting earlier. A silver BMW parked along the street, license plate number I'd unconsciously memorized. A quick search on my phone confirmed what I'd suspected. The car was registered to someone named Connor Walsh, with an address in the upscale Thornfield district. Connor Walsh. I'd never heard Trevor mention that name either, but something about it nagged at me. I opened Natalie's Instagram again and scrolled back through her photos more carefully this time. There, in a picture from 3 months ago, was a glimpse of a man's hand wearing a distinctive gold watch, tagged with a heart emoji, but no name. Another photo from a dinner at the Carlisle restaurant showed 2 wine glasses and the caption, "Perfect evening with my favorite person," but no face visible. I was about to dig deeper when I heard footsteps behind me. Trevor appeared around the corner, his expression concerned but controlled. "There you are. I was looking for you. Everything okay?" "Perfect," I replied, slipping my phone away. "Just getting some air. Beautiful night for a party, don't you think?" He nodded, but his eyes were searching my face for something. He was wondering if I suspected anything, calculating whether he needed to cut the evening short or adjust his strategy. "We should probably get back," he said finally. "People will be looking for the hosts." "Absolutely," I agreed, linking my arm through his with the same easy affection I'd shown for 10 years. After all, this is our special night, our anniversary, a celebration of everything we've built together.
As we walked back toward our guests, I felt that cold clarity settling deeper into my bones. Trevor thought he was playing a sophisticated game, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd brought his secret life into my domain, introduced his deception into a space I controlled completely. He had no idea that his perfect plan was about to become the foundation of his complete undoing. The party continued around us, 50 people celebrating a marriage that had apparently been a facade for months or maybe years. But while Trevor worried about maintaining his performance and Natalie concentrated on charming our friends, I was already 3 steps ahead, my mind cataloging every detail, every connection, every weakness in their carefully constructed lie. By the time our guests went home that night, I would know exactly how to destroy everything they'd built together. And the beautiful irony was that they'd given me all the tools I needed, gift-wrapped and delivered to my own backyard. The real anniversary celebration was just beginning. It took a lot of care and time to prepare and narrate this for you, so if you're enjoying it, a quick subscribe really helps and means the world to us. All right, let's get back to it. The party ended at midnight, but my real work was just beginning. As Trevor helped me clean up the backyard, stacking chairs and collecting empty glasses, I watched him with new eyes. Every casual comment about how well the evening had gone, every mention of which colleagues had enjoyed themselves, every careful omission of Natalie's name, despite her obvious presence throughout the night. "Great turnout," he said, dumping ice from the beverage tubs into the garden beds. "I think everyone had a good time. Even some of my work people seemed to fit right in." Work people. Plural. As if he'd brought multiple colleagues instead of one very specific woman who'd spent the evening charming our friends and family. The casual deception in his voice made my skin crawl. I replied, loading champagne flutes into the dishwasher. "That redhead from your marketing department seemed lovely. Natalie, was it?" Trevor paused for just a fraction of a second before continuing to fold tablecloths. "Yeah, she's good at her job. Professional networking and all that. Important to maintain relationships with different departments." Professional networking. I filed that phrase away with all the other euphemisms he'd probably been using to justify his behavior. Meanwhile, I was already planning my next moves. The party had given me a starting point, but I needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with.
After Trevor fell asleep, I crept downstairs to our home office with my laptop and a cup of coffee. It was 2:30 a.m., but I was wide awake, energized by purpose in a way I hadn't felt in years. I started with what I could access legally and easily: our shared accounts, phone records, credit card statements, and social media activity. The phone records were revealing. Over the past 6 months, Trevor had been making an unusual number of calls to a number I didn't recognize. The calls typically lasted between 15 and 45 minutes, often during his commute home or late in the evening when he claimed to be reviewing work files in his study. I cross-referenced the number with reverse lookup services and found it registered to N. Reeves in the Thornfield district. Natalie lived 23 minutes from our house, close enough for spontaneous visits, far enough to maintain the illusion of separate lives. The credit card statements painted an even clearer picture. Dinner charges at upscale restaurants in Thornfield and downtown Clearwater on nights when Trevor claimed to be working late. Hotel charges during supposed business trips that didn't align with his company's actual travel schedule. Purchases from Bellefonte jewelry on dates that coincided with no special occasions in our marriage. I pulled up our shared calendar and began cross-referencing Trevor's reported activities with these financial records. The pattern was damning. Every client dinner that had appeared on our calendar corresponded to a restaurant charge in Thornfield. Every weekend conference matched hotel expenses in cities where Stratford Dynamics had no business interests. But the most telling evidence came from Trevor's own digital footprint. His location services, which he'd forgotten were shared with our family account, told a story of regular visits to addresses in Thornfield, extended stays at locations that weren't his office, and frequent stops at places like Riverside Park and Brewster's Cafe that he'd never mentioned to me. I opened a new document and began building a timeline. The earliest evidence I could find dated back 14 months. A dinner charge at Antonelli's Italian restaurant on a Tuesday night when Trevor had texted me about a last-minute client emergency. That same evening, Natalie had posted an Instagram story featuring ossobuco and expensive wine geotagged at the same restaurant. 14 months. Over a year of systematic deception, careful planning, and elaborate lies. This wasn't a recent affair or a moment of weakness. This was a parallel relationship, complete with anniversaries they were probably celebrating while I planned birthday dinners and anniversary parties for a marriage that had become a performance. I dug deeper into Natalie's social media history, screenshotting posts and saving images before she could potentially make her accounts private. Her Instagram revealed a woman living well above what a marketing director's salary should support. Designer handbags, luxury vacations, expensive spa treatments, and dinners at restaurants that charged more for one meal than most people spent on groceries in a week.
But it was her Facebook account that provided the most crucial information. Buried in photos from a company Christmas party 8 months ago, I found a group shot that made my blood run cold. Trevor and Natalie weren't just standing together, they were positioned like a couple. His arm around her waist, her hand on his chest, both of them wearing matching expressions of contentment and belonging. The photo was tagged by multiple Stratford Dynamics employees. Comments included things like, "Such a cute couple," and "When's the wedding?" with laughing emojis. Trevor had responded to several comments, but his replies had been deleted. However, the responses from other people remained. "We'll be there," and "Can't wait for the announcement." I sat back in my desk chair, coffee growing cold in my hands, as the full scope of Trevor's betrayal crystallized. This wasn't just an affair. He was living a completely separate life, where he and Natalie were an acknowledged couple among his coworkers. While I was home planning our anniversary party, he was attending company events where people expected him to announce his engagement to another woman. I opened a new browser tab and searched for Connor Walsh, the name I'd connected to the BMW parked near our house during the party. A LinkedIn profile appeared immediately. Connor Walsh, financial advisor at Meridian Wealth Management, specializing in high net worth client portfolios. His profile photo showed a handsome man in his early 30s with dark hair and the kind of confident smile that suggested success and stability. His company bio mentioned that he lived in Thornfield District with his wife, Natalie, and that they were active in local charity organizations and the Clearwater Heights Country Club. Wife. Not girlfriend, not partner, wife. I stared at the screen, pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. Natalie wasn't just Trevor's girlfriend. She was married to Connor Walsh, which meant this situation was far more complicated than I initially realized. Trevor wasn't just cheating on me, he was having an affair with another married woman. And if Connor was clueless as I had been, then there were two betrayed spouses in this equation. I spent the next 2 hours researching Connor Walsh and building a profile of his life with Natalie. Their wedding announcement from 3 years ago in the Clearwater Heights Gazette described an elegant ceremony at the Thornfield Country Club, complete with photos of a radiant bride and groom surrounded by family and friends. The announcement mentioned that the couple planned to settle in Thornfield District, where Connor had recently made partner at his firm. Their social media told the story of a couple building a successful life together. Photos from charity galas, vacation trips to Europe, anniversary dinners at expensive restaurants. Connor's posts about his wife were filled with genuine affection and pride. Last month's post on their anniversary read, 3 years with the most amazing woman I've ever known. Every day with Natalie is a gift. While he was posting tributes to his wife, she was having dinner with my husband at the same restaurants, probably on the same nights. I found their wedding registry, still active online, and discovered they'd received expensive gifts from Trevor. A crystal vase worth $400, purchased 2.5 years ago. Trevor had tended their wedding, brought them a generous gift, smiled in photos with the happy couple, and then proceeded to seduce the bride. The level of calculation was staggering. Trevor hadn't stumbled into an affair. He'd systematically pursued a married woman, probably using their professional relationship as cover. He attended her wedding, befriended her husband, and then destroyed their marriage from the inside while maintaining the facade of being a trustworthy colleague and friend. I opened her shared photo album and scrolled back through pictures from company events over the past few years. There was Trevor at the Stratford Dynamics holiday party 2 years ago, standing in a group that included both Connor and Natalie. There he was at a company picnic, playing volleyball on a team with Connor while Natalie was cheering from the sidelines. Photo after photo of Trevor integrating himself into their social circle, building trust and familiarity that he would later exploit. But the most damning evidence came from Trevor's own phone. While he slept upstairs, I used our shared Apple ID to access his message history through the cloud. The texts between Trevor and Natalie went back over a year, starting with professional conversations about marketing campaigns and gradually becoming more personal. The progression was textbook emotional affair escalation. Complaints about demanding spouses, shared frustrations about feeling unappreciated at home, and late-night conversations about dreams and aspirations. Then came the transition to meeting for coffee to talk through work stress, followed by dinner meetings that lasted until midnight. The messages from recent months were explicit about their relationship and their future plans. Discussions about Trevor leaving me after our anniversary party, conversations about Natalie ending her marriage to Connor, and detailed planning for a life together. They'd even looked at apartments in the neighboring city of Millbrook, far enough away to start fresh, but close enough to maintain their jobs. After this weekend, we can stop pretending, Trevor had texted just 3 days ago. The anniversary party will be the perfect cover story. We'll both have public events to reference while we make our real plans. Natalie's response was equally chilling. I can't wait to stop lying to Connor about working late. This double life is exhausting, but it'll all be worth it when we're finally together properly. They had been using our anniversary party as camouflage for their relationship and as a stepping stone toward leaving their respective spouses. While I was carefully planning a celebration of our marriage, They were planning its destruction. I printed screenshots of the most damaging messages and organized them chronologically. Then I did something that surprised me with its boldness. I opened a new email account under a pseudonym and began researching Connor Walsh's daily routine through his social media posts and public information. He worked out at Pinnacle Fitness on Thornfeld Avenue every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 a.m. He had coffee at Greystone Cafe every morning before work. He played tennis at the country club every Saturday morning with a regular group that included his brother-in-law, Michael. Connor Walsh had no idea that his wife was planning to leave him, or that the colleague he'd welcomed into their social circle was systematically destroying his marriage. But unlike me, he wouldn't have to discover the truth by accident. I was going to make sure he learned everything, and I was going to make sure he learned it in a way that would give him the same advantages I now possessed. Knowledge was power, and I intended to share that power with the one person who deserved it as much as I did. As dawn broke over Clearwater Heights, I closed my laptop and headed upstairs. Trevor was still sleeping peacefully, probably dreaming about his new life with Natalie while lying next to the wife he planned to abandon. He looked innocent in sleep, almost like the man I'd married 10 years ago, before ambition and selfishness had transformed him into someone capable of such calculated cruelty. But I wasn't the same woman he'd married either. The Jessica who had gone to bed last night after hosting a lovely anniversary party no longer existed. In her place was someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. Trevor and Natalie thought they held all the cards, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They underestimated their victim's capacity for strategic thinking and coordinated response. By the time I was finished with them, they would understand exactly how costly that mistake had been. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel possible. I had spent Monday researching Connor Walsh's routine, and I knew he would be at Greystone Cafe on Thornfield Avenue at exactly 7:15 a.m., just like he had been every weekday for the past 2 years, according to his social media check-ins. Trevor left for work at his usual time, kissing my cheek and mentioning something about a busy day ahead. I watched him drive away in his silver sedan, probably heading straight to Stratford Dynamics, where he would spend the day maintaining his professional facade while texting his married girlfriend. The irony wasn't lost on me that he was going to work in the same building as the woman whose husband I was about to contact. I arrived at Greystone Cafe 20 minutes early, claiming a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. The cafe was exactly what I'd expected from Connor's Instagram posts, upscale but unpretentious with exposed brick walls and the kind of carefully curated vintage decor that appealed to Thornfield District's young professionals. I ordered a latte and opened my laptop, trying to look like any other remote worker starting her day. Connor walked through the door at precisely 7:14 a.m., and I recognized him immediately from his photos. Tall, athletic build, wearing a charcoal gray suit that suggested success without ostentation. He moved with the confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin, nodding to the barista who clearly knew his regular order. Everything about him radiated the kind of stability and genuine warmth that made Trevor's deception even more despicable. Watching him collect his coffee and scan the cafe for seating, when his eyes met mine, I offered a tentative smile and gestured to the empty chair across from my table. "Excuse me, would you mind if I asked you something? I think you might be Connor Walsh." He paused, coffee in hand, looking puzzled but not alarmed. "Yes, that's me. Do we know each other?" "Not exactly," I replied, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "My name is Jessica Hartwell. I believe we have something very important to discuss about our spouses." The change in his expression was immediate and telling. Not confusion, but recognition. The look of someone who'd been waiting for this conversation without knowing it. He sat down slowly, his professional composure intact, but wariness creeping into his eyes. "I'm not sure I understand," he said carefully, though his tone suggested he understood perfectly. I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward him. The first image was the screenshot from Saturday night's party, showing Trevor and Natalie sharing that intimate look across our backyard. This was taken at my 10th anniversary party, 3 days ago.
Your wife was there as my husband's guest. Connor stared at the photo for a long moment, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. Natalie mentioned a work event on Saturday, a colleague's anniversary celebration. His voice was controlled, but I caught the slight emphasis on colleague. Did she mention that the colleague was married and that she spent the evening charming his wife's friends and family while maintaining perfect professional distance in public, but complete emotional intimacy when she thought no one was watching?
I scrolled to the next image, a screenshot from Natalie's Instagram story showing the emerald green dress laid out on a bed, captioned, "Perfect outfit for tonight's special occasion." The timestamp showed it was posted 3 hours before our party. "Special occasion?" Connor repeated quietly. "She told me it was just a networking thing." "I have 14 months of evidence suggesting otherwise," I said, my tone gentle but direct. "Credit card statements, location data, text messages, social media posts. Your wife and my husband have been having an affair since last summer, and based on their recent communications, they're planning to leave both of us very soon." Connor set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. "Show me everything." For the next 30 minutes, I walked him through the timeline I'd constructed. The restaurant charges that coincided with Natalie's Instagram posts, the hotel expenses during Trevor's supposed business trips, the company Christmas party photos where they appeared as a couple. Connor listened without interruption, his expression growing harder with each revelation. When I showed him the text messages between Trevor and Natalie discussing their plans to end both marriages after our anniversary party, Connor's professional composure finally cracked. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, running his hands through his hair. "I gave him a bottle of champagne at your party. I congratulated him on 10 years of marriage." "He attended your wedding," I replied quietly. "He brought you an expensive gift and smiled in photos with you and Natalie. Then he spent the next 2.5 years systematically seducing your wife." Connor leaned back in his chair, processing this information. The working late, the weekend conferences, the sudden interest in company social events. I thought she was just ambitious, trying to advance her career. He laughed bitterly. I was proud of her dedication. "They've been very careful," I said. "Professional colleagues in public, lovers in private. They've used their work relationship as perfect cover, and they've used our trust against us." "How long have you known?" "Since Saturday night. I spent Sunday and Monday investigating before approaching you. I wanted to be certain, and I wanted to have complete information before we decided how to handle this." Connor studied my face with new interest. "We? You're assuming I want to work together." "I'm hoping you do," I replied honestly. "They've been planning this together, coordinating their deception, supporting each other through the guilt and lies. Meanwhile, we've been isolated, each dealing with a cheating spouse alone. They have the advantage of partnership. I think we should too." He considered this for a moment. "What exactly are you proposing?" I closed my laptop and leaned forward. "They think they're so much smarter than us. They think they've planned the perfect exit strategy where they'll blindside both of us with simultaneous revelations and walk off into the sunset together. But they've made mistakes, left evidence, created vulnerabilities. Most importantly, they've underestimated us." "And you want to what exactly? Confront them? Expose them publicly?" "I want to make sure they face appropriate consequences for their choices," I said carefully. "Not just the inconvenience of divorce proceedings, but real accountability for the calculated cruelty they've shown both of us." Connor was quiet for several minutes, sipping his coffee and staring out the cafe window. Finally, he spoke. "Natalie's been different for months. Distant, secretive, always on her phone. When I tried to plan a vacation for our anniversary, she said she was too busy with work projects. Now I know what those projects really were." "Trevor's been the same way. I attributed it to midlife restlessness, maybe work stress.
I actually felt sorry for him, tried to be more supportive and understanding. The irony tasted bitter in my mouth. 3 years, Connor said quietly. We've been married 3 years, and she's been cheating for almost half of that time. The whole foundation of our relationship has been a lie. 14 months that I can prove, I corrected. But you're right about the foundation. Once trust is broken at this level, there's no rebuilding it. Connor pulled out his phone and scrolled through what I assumed were recent messages from Natalie. She texted me yesterday about working late again tonight. Emergency client presentation, she said. I was going to surprise her with dinner from her favorite restaurant. Trevor has a client dinner tonight too. Same lie, same night. They're probably planning their next moves, maybe discussing when and how to tell us they're leaving. The arrogance is what gets me, Connor said, his voice hardening. They've been playing us both for fools while building a relationship on our backs, using our homes, our resources, our emotional support to sustain themselves through their affair. I nodded. Trevor used our anniversary party as cover to introduce Natalie to our social circle. She charmed our friends and family while planning to destroy our marriage. They turned our celebration into their opportunity. So what do you suggest we do about it? I had been preparing for this question since I'd decided to approach him. I think we should let them believe they're still in control while we gather more evidence and plan our response. They're expecting us to be devastated victims when they finally reveal their affair. Instead, I think we should be prepared, unified, and several steps ahead of them. You mean we pretend we don't know? I mean, we use their own strategy against them. They've been living double lives, maintaining facades while pursuing their real agenda. We can do the same thing, except our real agenda is making sure they face full consequences for their choices.
Connor leaned forward, his business instincts clearly engaged. What kind of consequences are you thinking about? Social consequences, professional consequences, financial consequences. They want to start a new life together? Fine. But they should start it with everyone knowing exactly how they conducted themselves in their previous relationships. You want to expose them publicly. I want to ensure that the people who matter in their professional and social circles understand what kind of people they're dealing with. Trevor works in financial planning, where trust and ethics are supposedly paramount. Natalie works in marketing, where reputation matters. Their colleagues, clients, and friends deserve to know how they handle commitments and treat the people who trust them. Connor was quiet for a moment, then asked, "What about legally? Divorce proceedings, asset division, all of that?" "That's where working together really benefits us both," I said. "They've been careless with evidence because they assumed we'd never compare notes. Text messages, financial records, documented patterns of deception. If we coordinate our legal strategies, we can ensure they face appropriate financial consequences for their choices." "You've really thought this through." "I've had 3 days to think about nothing else. And I've realized something important. They've been planning this systematically for over a year. They deserve a response that's equally systematic and thorough." Connor finished his coffee and checked his watch. "I need to get to work, but I want to continue this conversation. Are you available to meet again tomorrow?" "Absolutely. Same time, same place?" "Actually," he said, standing and straightening his tie, "let me give you my personal email address, not the one Natalie has access to. I think we should communicate privately while we figure out our next steps." I handed him my business card with my personal information. "I've been thinking we should document everything we discover, create a complete timeline of their affair with evidence. The more thoroughly we understand what they've been doing, the better we can respond." "Agreed. And Jessica," he paused, looking directly at me, "thank you for approaching me. I don't know how long I would have stayed blind to this if you hadn't. We both deserve to know the truth. They certainly weren't going to tell us voluntarily." As Connor left the cafe, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Saturday night.
hope. Not for reconciliation or forgiveness, but for justice. Trevor and Natalie had spent 14 months building their relationship through deception and betrayal. Now Connor and I would spend however long it took building something too. A comprehensive response that would ensure they understood the true cost of their choices. I opened my laptop and began typing an email to Connor with all the evidence I'd gathered so far. But more importantly, I started outlining a plan that would give us the same advantages they enjoyed: coordination, information, and the element of surprise. They wanted to play games with other people's lives and emotions. Perfect. But this time, they wouldn't be the only ones setting the rules. Over the next 5 days, Connor and I exchanged 17 emails, met twice more at different locations, and constructed what could only be described as a military-grade intelligence operation. Our communication was methodical, professional, and devastatingly thorough. We used encrypted email accounts, met at locations where neither of our spouses would accidentally encounter us, and documented everything with the precision of corporate investigators. Connor brought skills I hadn't anticipated. His background in financial planning meant he understood asset protection, legal documentation, and forensic accounting. More importantly, his access to professional networks gave us resources I couldn't have accessed alone. Within 3 days, he had quietly retained a private investigator who specialized in marital infidelity cases and a divorce attorney known for aggressive asset protection strategies. The PI found something interesting, Connor said, during our Thursday morning meeting at Millstone Coffee House, 20 minutes outside of Clearwater Heights. He slid a manila folder across the table. I opened it to find photographs taken with a telephoto lens. Trevor and Natalie walking hand in hand through a luxury apartment complex in downtown Millbrook, both of them animated and clearly comfortable with each other. Another photo showed them embracing in the parking lot while a woman in a business suit, presumably their realtor, was waiting discreetly nearby. When were these taken? I asked, studying Trevor's face in the images. He looked genuinely happy, more relaxed than I had seen him in months. Tuesday afternoon. According to the timestamps, this was during Trevor's supposed client meeting and Natalie's emergency project deadline. Connor's voice carried bitter satisfaction. The PI also confirmed they've submitted rental applications for a 2-bedroom unit in the Grandview Towers complex. Move-in date requested for the first of the next month. Next month, less than 3 weeks away. They weren't just planning to leave us, they had already secured their future together and set a specific timeline for abandoning their marriages. The calculation was breathtaking. There's more, Connor continued, pulling out his phone. I've been monitoring Natalie's credit card statements through our joint account. Yesterday, she made a large purchase at Pembroke Design Studio. When I called pretending to be following up on a delivery, they confirmed she'd ordered custom window treatments for a 2-bedroom apartment. I felt a cold settle in my stomach. They're nesting? Building a home together while lying to our faces every single day?
The PI also tracked their communication patterns. They're not just texting, they're using a private messaging app called Secure Chat that automatically deletes conversations after 24 hours. But here's what they didn't know. The app keeps metadata, including message frequency and timestamps. Connor showed me a detailed report on his phone. They're in constant contact, sometimes over 50 messages per day, usually starting around 6 a.m. when they wake up and continuing until nearly midnight. This isn't just an affair, it's a complete emotional relationship happening parallel to their marriages. I absorbed this information while sipping my coffee. What about their work situation? Are they being careful there, or is their relationship obvious to colleagues? That's where it gets interesting. I reached out to my contact at Stratford Dynamics, someone in HR who owes me a favor from a previous consulting project. Apparently, Trevor and Natalie's relationship is an open secret in their department. People assume they're dating but separated, or divorced and seeing each other. No one realizes they're both still married to other people. So they've been living as a couple professionally while maintaining their marriages privately. That explains why they were so comfortable at our anniversary party. I pulled out my own folder of evidence. I've been tracking their financial coordination. Look at this. I showed Connor credit card statements and bank records I'd compiled. They've been splitting expenses for their apartment hunting, sharing costs for their romantic dinners, even coordinating gift purchases. Last month, Trevor bought Natalie an expensive necklace for her birthday. The same day, she transferred money to his account to cover half the cost. Connor studied the financial records with professional interest. They're operating like a married couple financially, while still legally married to us. That creates interesting legal vulnerabilities, especially regarding asset commingling and marital property rights. Meaning what exactly? Meaning they've been using marital assets to fund their affair relationship. Every dinner, every gift, every shared expense has been paid for with money that legally belongs partially to us. My attorney says that creates grounds for significant financial recovery in divorce proceedings. I leaned back in my chair, processing the implications. They think they're being so sophisticated, but they've actually created a paper trail that documents their affair with forensic precision. Exactly. And there's something else. Connor's expression grew more serious. The PI discovered they've been meeting with a couples counselor. I stared at him. A couples counselor? They're in therapy together? Dr. Miranda Santos on Elmwood Avenue. They've been seeing her bi-weekly for the past 2 months, working on communication skills and relationship planning. According to the appointment logs the PI accessed, their sessions focus on transitioning from secrecy to openness and managing family disruption during major life changes. The audacity was stunning. While Trevor and I struggled with growing distance in our marriage, he was in couples therapy with another woman, actively working on building a healthy relationship with her while our marriage deteriorated from his emotional absence. They're not just having an affair, I said slowly. They're building a foundation for a serious long-term relationship. The therapy, the apartment, the financial coordination, the professional integration. This is comprehensive life planning. Which brings us to the question of how we respond, Connor said. We could confront them now, armed with all this evidence. We could file for divorce immediately and use everything we've discovered to maximize financial and custody advantages. Or, I sensed there was another option. Connor smiled, and for the first time since I'd met him, it wasn't a pleasant expression. Or we let them continue with their timeline while we prepare something more comprehensive. They want to surprise us with their revelations and walk away clean. I think we should surprise them instead. What are you thinking? They've scheduled their apartment move-in for the 1st of next month. Based on their recent communication patterns, I think they're planning to tell us about their relationship that same weekend. Classic strategy. Present the fait accompli when they're already established in their new life together. I nodded. Maximum shock value, minimum opportunity for us to interfere with their plans. Exactly. But what if, when they sit us down for their carefully rehearsed speeches about finding true love and needing to end their marriages, we're already several steps ahead of them? Connor pulled out a legal pad covered with notes and timelines. My attorney suggests we prepare divorce filings in advance, complete with asset freezing orders and detailed evidence of their financial misconduct. We could have everything ready to file the moment they admit to the affair. Legal nuclear option, I said appreciatively. They expect tearful confrontations and emotional chaos. Instead, they get served with papers documenting everything they thought was secret. But that's just the legal response. I think we should consider the professional and social consequences too. Connor's expression grew more serious. They work for the same company, where their relationship violates multiple corporate policies regarding disclosure and potential conflicts of interest. Their families and social circles have no idea they've been living double lives. I felt a surge of anticipation. You want to expose them comprehensively, not just end the marriages, but ensure there are consequences across every area of their lives? I want them to understand that actions have repercussions beyond their personal convenience. They've spent over a year manipulating and deceiving people who trusted them. They should face accountability that matches the scope of their deception.
We spent the next hour outlining a comprehensive response strategy. Connor would coordinate with his divorce attorney to prepare legal filings that could be executed immediately. I would compile evidence packages for Stratford Dynamics HR department, documenting Trevor and Natalie's undisclosed relationship and use of company resources for personal affairs. But the centerpiece of our plan was something more psychologically satisfying. We would let them proceed with their reveal timeline, allowing them to sit us down and deliver their carefully prepared explanations about finding true love and needing to end their marriages. Then, instead of reacting with shock and devastation, we would calmly present them with evidence of everything we knew. "I want to see their faces," Connor said quietly, "when they realize we've known about their plans all along. When they understand that while they were congratulating themselves on their cleverness, we were documenting their every move." "The psychological impact will be devastating," I agreed. "They've built their entire strategy around our ignorance. Discovering that we've been actively investigating them while maintaining perfect facades will shatter their sense of control." Connor checked his watch. "I need to get back to the office. But Jessica, are you certain you want to proceed with this level of comprehensive response? Once we implement this plan, there's no going back to simple divorce proceedings." I thought about Trevor kissing my cheek every morning while planning his new life with Natalie. About Natalie charming our friends at the anniversary party while wearing a dress she'd probably chosen to impress my husband. About 14 months of systematic deception, financial manipulation, and emotional cruelty disguised as marriage. They made their choice when they decided to build their relationship on lies and betrayal, I said firmly. We're just ensuring they face appropriate consequences for that choice. Then let's proceed. I'll coordinate the legal preparations, you handle the evidence compilation for their employer, and we'll both continue monitoring their activities until they're ready to make their move. As Connor left the coffee shop, I remained at the table, reviewing our notes and timelines. Trevor and Natalie thought they were approaching the finish line of their elaborate deception. In reality, they were walking directly into the most comprehensive reckoning either of them had ever faced. They wanted to start a new life together? Perfect. But they would start it with everyone in their professional and personal circles knowing exactly what kind of people they really were. They would start it with significant financial consequences and legal complications. Most importantly, they would start it knowing that their victims had been far more intelligent and resourceful than they had ever imagined. The next 2 weeks would require perfect acting from both Connor and me. We would continue being loving, trusting spouses while secretly documenting every aspect of their affair and preparing responses they couldn't possibly anticipate. Trevor and Natalie had spent 14 months believing they were the smartest people in the room. Soon they would discover just how wrong they had been. The moment to test our strategy arrived sooner than expected. On Friday evening, exactly 2 weeks after our anniversary party, Trevor announced he would be working late again to finalize a major client proposal. His tone was casual, practiced, but I caught the slight hesitation that had become familiar over the past months of deception. "Another late night?" I asked, looking up from the financial reports I was reviewing at our kitchen table. "You've been putting in so many extra hours lately. I hope they're compensating you appropriately for all this dedication." Trevor paused in the doorway, briefcase in hand. "You know how it is during quarter end. Everyone's pushing to close deals before the numbers get finalized." "Of course," I replied with genuine-sounding sympathy. "Will you be working with anyone from other departments? I remember you mentioning some cross-departmental collaboration recently." His shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly. "Probably just the usual team. Nothing too exciting." I smiled warmly. "Well, don't work too hard. And Trevor, thank you for everything you do for us. I know these long hours are stressful, but I appreciate how committed you are to our future." The guilt that flashed across his face was almost satisfying. He kissed the top of my head, a gesture that once felt affectionate but now seemed like performance art. I'll try not to be too late. After his car pulled out of the driveway, I immediately texted Connor. Target 1 has departed for supposed work emergency. Confirm Target 2 status. His response came within minutes. Target 2 claimed emergency client dinner, left 30 minutes ago wearing new ties and expensive perfume. Connor and I had developed our own communication system over the past 2 weeks, using language that felt appropriately dramatic for the situation.
Our private investigator had confirmed that Trevor and Natalie typically met at the Grandview Towers apartment complex on Friday evenings, supposedly reviewing their future living space, but actually playing house in their soon-to-be home. This Friday would be different. This Friday, Connor and I would implement the first phase of our active strategy.
We had previously confirmed through the leasing office that their prospective apartment was Unit 712. The PI had also provided us with the building's access codes, obtained through creative social engineering involving a fictitious delivery company. Phase 1, I asked, pulling out my phone. Connor nodded. Let's see how they react to unexpected complications. I dialed Trevor's number, my voice prepared with precisely the right amount of concern and confusion. He answered on the third ring, and I could hear Natalie's laughter in the background before he moved to a quieter location. Hey, honey, everything okay? His voice carried forced casualness. Trevor, I'm so sorry to bother you during your important meeting, but I just got the strangest call from your office. Someone from security said there was a break-in attempt in your building, and they're doing a sweep of all departments. They wanted to confirm which employees were still in the building for safety purposes. Silence. Then, a break-in? I haven't heard anything about that. That's what I thought was odd. If you're there working late, wouldn't security have mentioned it to you? The woman on the phone seemed very concerned about accounting for everyone's whereabouts. I'm sure it's just miscommunication. You know how security companies can be with their protocols. Probably, I agreed pleasantly. Anyway, I gave them your direct office line so they could reach you immediately if needed. I hope that's okay. I figured if you're working late, you'd want to be informed about any safety issues. Another pause. Longer this time. Actually, I just remembered I need to step out for a few minutes. Client meeting moved to a restaurant. If security calls, just tell them I will check in later. Of course. Where's the meeting, in case there's an emergency at home? Just downtown. Nothing specific scheduled. I'll call you when I'm heading home. He hung up quickly, and I immediately saw the apartment building's main entrance doors open. Trevor emerged first, phone pressed to his ear, scanning the street nervously. Natalie followed 30 seconds later, looking annoyed and confused. Beautiful, Connor murmured. Watch this. Connor's phone was already dialing as Trevor and Natalie stood by their cars in the parking lot, clearly having a tense conversation. When Natalie answered, Connor's voice carried perfect husband-like concern. Natalie, sweetheart, are you okay? I just got a call from your office about some kind of security incident. They said all employees needed to verify their current locations immediately. Even from our position across the street, we could see Natalie's posture stiffen. She moved away from Trevor, clearly trying to maintain privacy for her conversation. A security incident? What kind of incident? Something about unauthorized access to company systems. Very serious, apparently. They mentioned that marketing department staff were particular priorities because of client data access. The security chief said they were sending someone to verify the location of any employees not currently in the building. Natalie's free hand went to her forehead. I left the office a while ago. That's what I told them. I said you were at that client dinner you mentioned. They asked for the restaurant name so they could send verification there if needed. What was the name again? I want to make sure I gave them the right information. We watched Natalie pace in small circles, her body language screaming stress and confusion. Connor, the dinner location changed. We're not, it's complicated. Complicated how? Honey, this sounds serious. If there's been a security breach and they need to account for employee whereabouts, shouldn't you be cooperating fully? Trevor had moved closer to Natalie, trying to listen to her conversation while maintaining his own phone call with someone else, probably calling Stratford Dynamics directly to verify if there actually was a security incident. I think I should just head home. This all sounds very confusing, and I'd rather deal with it from the office tomorrow. That's probably smart. I'll be here waiting. Drive safely and call me if you need anything. Connor ended the call and turned to me with satisfaction. Phase 1 complete. They're both rattled, both making excuses to end their evening early, and both trying to verify information that doesn't exist.
Within minutes, we watched Trevor and Natalie have what appeared to be an increasingly heated discussion in the parking lot. Their body language suggested frustration, confusion, and mutual blame. Finally, they separated to their respective cars and left the complex within minutes of each other. My phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. Meeting ended early. Heading home now. Long day. Connor's phone chimed simultaneously with the message from Natalie. Client dinner canceled. Coming home. Need wine and quiet evening. Perfect, I said, feeling a surge of satisfaction. They're both going home to lie to us about where they've been, what they've been doing, and why their evening ended early. And they're both going to spend the weekend wondering if their workplace security has been compromised, if someone suspects their relationship, and whether their carefully constructed secret is in danger. We packed up our surveillance position and walked towards our cars. The first direct engagement was a complete success. Trevor and Natalie had experienced their first taste of losing control, of having their plans disrupted by unexpected complications they couldn't explain or predict. How did it feel? Connor asked as we reached our vehicles. Empowering, I replied honestly. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had agency in this situation. Instead of being the victim of their deception, I was actively influencing their experience.
Same here. They've gotten comfortable with their routine, their sense of safety and predictability. Tonight was a reminder that they don't control all the variables. We had planned phase 2 for the following week, a more direct psychological pressure campaign that would make them increasingly paranoid about discovery while maintaining our facades of ignorant, trusting spouses. One more thing, Connor said before getting into his car. My attorney confirmed that we can file the divorce papers with asset protection orders anytime we're ready. All the documentation is prepared, all the evidence is compiled. When we're ready to move from psychological pressure to legal action, we can execute immediately. How long do you think we should maintain the pressure campaign before moving to direct confrontation? Connor considered this. I think we let them get more desperate, more paranoid, more likely to make mistakes. People under pressure tend to accelerate their timelines and make poor decisions. The more rattled they become, the more likely they are to reveal additional information or create new evidence we can use. I nodded, understanding the strategy. We keep them off balance until they're desperate enough to move faster than they originally planned. Exactly. And when they finally sit us down for their carefully rehearsed revelations about finding true love and needing to end their marriages, they'll be emotionally exhausted from weeks of unexplained stress and paranoia. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced since the night of our anniversary party. Genuine anticipation for the future. Not for reconciliation or forgiveness, but for the satisfaction of watching Trevor and Natalie discover that their victims were far more intelligent and resourceful than they had ever imagined. Trevor was already home when I arrived, sitting in his study with a glass of whiskey and his laptop open. He looked up when I entered, his expression carefully neutral. "How was your evening?" "Quiet. Just caught up on some reading." "How was your meeting? You seem stressed." He rubbed his temples. "Just work complications, nothing worth discussing." "Well, I'm here if you want to talk about anything. You know that, right? We can discuss whatever's bothering you." The irony was perfect. Trevor, stressed from the evening's disruptions and worried about potential exposure, being offered emotional support by the wife he was planning to abandon. He looked at me with something that might have been guilt or gratitude, unable to recognize that the woman offering comfort was the same person who had orchestrated his evening's anxiety. "I know," he said quietly. "Thank you." I kissed his forehead and headed upstairs, leaving him alone with his whiskey and his worries. Tomorrow, Connor and I would begin planning phase 2. By the time we were finished, Trevor and Natalie would understand that actions have consequences, and some consequences are far more comprehensive than others. The weekend after our successful psychological operation, Connor and I escalated to phase 2. Trevor and Natalie were clearly on edge, both making excuses to avoid their usual Friday evening routine, and both exhibiting signs of stress at home.
But rather than backing down, we decided to increase the pressure systematically. Monday morning brought our first professional intervention. I arrived at Stratford Dynamics at 11:30 a.m., carrying a beautifully wrapped gift basket and wearing my most pleasant smile. The receptionist, a young woman named Sarah, looked up expectantly as I approached her desk. "Good morning," I said warmly. "I'm Jessica Hartwell, Trevor's wife. I wanted to surprise him with lunch today, but I also brought some thank you treats for his department. He's been working such long hours lately, and I know his colleagues have been supporting him through these demanding projects." Sarah's face lit up with recognition. "Oh, Mrs. Hartwell, how thoughtful. Trevor's in a meeting right now, but I can let him know you're here." "Actually," I said, leaning in conspiratorially, "I was hoping to surprise him. Could you point me toward the marketing department? I wanted to personally thank some of the people he's been collaborating with, especially Natalie Reeves. He mentions her contributions quite often." Sarah's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of something that might have been surprise or discomfort. "Oh, marketing is on the 4th floor, but I think Natalie might be in a meeting as well." "Perfect! I'll just leave these treats at her desk with a note. Trevor always says she's so dedicated to their projects." I took the elevator to the 4th floor, navigating the open office layout until I found Natalie's workstation. Her desk was impeccably organized with framed photos that notably did not include any pictures of Connor. Instead, there was a small photo of them from what appeared to be a work conference, positioned where she could see it throughout the day. I placed the gift basket prominently on her desk and attached a handwritten note. "Dear Natalie, Trevor speaks highly of your partnership on recent projects. As his wife, I wanted to personally thank you for all the extra hours you both have been dedicating to your collaboration. Looking forward to getting to know you better. Warmly, Jessica." Then I walked directly to Trevor's office. Through his glass door, I could see him on a conference call, his back turned to the hallway. I knocked gently and entered with my most loving wife smile. Trevor's eyes went wide when he saw me, and he quickly wrapped up his call. "Jessica, what are you doing here?"
Lunch surprise, I announced, holding up a bag from his favorite restaurant. "I was in the neighborhood and thought you might be hungry. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "No, of course not. This is wonderful. Very thoughtful." His voice carried forced enthusiasm, but his eyes kept darting toward the hallway, clearly worried about who might see us together. "I also brought treats for your department. I left a basket at Natalie's desk since you've mentioned working so closely with her lately. I wanted to thank her personally for being such a supportive colleague." Trevor's face went pale. What did you say to her?" "She wasn't at her desk, so I just left a note. Nothing elaborate, just appreciation for her dedication to your joint projects." I paused, studying his expression with apparent concern. "You look stressed, honey. Are you feeling all right?" "I'm fine. Just surprised to see you here. This is really thoughtful. Thank you." We shared lunch in his office while I chatted pleasantly about neighborhood news and weekend plans, but I could see Trevor's concentration was elsewhere, his attention repeatedly drawn to his phone and the hallway outside his office. When I finally left, kissing him goodbye in full view of his colleagues, I knew the psychological pressure had intensified significantly. Phase 2 continued throughout the week. Connor implemented his own version at the country club, where he and Natalie were members. On Wednesday evening, he arranged to run into several couples they knew socially, steering conversation toward marriage counseling and relationship therapy. Natalie's been suggesting we try couples counseling. She says it's becoming quite popular, even for couples without serious problems, just to enhance communication and intimacy. According to Connor's report, Natalie had looked genuinely panicked during this conversation, especially when one of their friends mentioned that her therapist, Dr. Miranda Santos, was supposed to be excellent for couples work. The look on her face when someone mentioned her actual therapist's name was priceless, Connor told me during our Thursday coffee meeting. She clearly realized that her secret therapy sessions with Trevor could be exposed if anyone started comparing notes about counselors and treatment approaches. But our most effective escalation came Thursday evening, when I implemented what we privately called the social media strategy. I had spent weeks carefully documenting Trevor and Natalie's digital footprints, including their patterns of social media activity and location sharing. That evening, while Trevor was supposedly at another late work meeting, I posted a series of Instagram stories showing my evening activities. First, a photo of dinner for one with the caption, "Solo dinner while hubby works late again, such dedication." Then, a picture of myself at Pinnacle Fitness with the timestamp clearly visible. Evening workout at 8 p.m., trying to stay healthy while Trevor burns the midnight oil. The significance was calculated and precise. Pinnacle Fitness was located directly across the street from the restaurant where Trevor and Natalie were having dinner. My location tag and timestamp would be visible to anyone who knew both of us, creating a near-miss situation that would make them paranoid about future close calls. I followed this with a final story post at 9:30 p.m., showing the view from the fitness center's parking lot with the caption, "Beautiful evening in Clearwater Heights, heading home to wait up for my hardworking husband." The photo clearly showed the restaurant where Trevor and Natalie were dining, though I was careful not to focus on them specifically. To casual observers, it would look like an innocent scenic shot. To Trevor and Natalie, it would look like evidence that I had been watching them without their knowledge. Trevor arrived home that night visibly shaken. "How was your evening?" he asked, his voice carefully controlled. "Wonderful. I had dinner, went to the gym, took some photos of the neighborhood. Just a peaceful evening. I posted a few pictures. The view from Pinnacle Fitness is really lovely at sunset." Trevor stared at the photo showing the restaurant, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. "You went to Pinnacle Fitness? That's not your usual gym." "I'm trying new places. Variety keeps exercise interesting." I smiled innocently. "Why? Is something wrong?" "No, nothing wrong. Just surprising choice of location." "Well, I like exploring different parts of Clearwater Heights. You never know what interesting things you might see." That night, Trevor spent over an hour in his study, making hushed phone calls. Through the door, I could hear tense fragments of conversation, words like "careful" and "too close" and "maybe we should slow down." The psychological pressure campaign was working perfectly. Trevor and Natalie were becoming increasingly paranoid, adjusting their routines, and questioning whether their secret was as secure as they had believed. But more importantly, they were making mistakes. Friday morning brought confirmation that our strategy was pushing them toward poor decisions. Connor texted me at 9 a.m., "Emergency meeting at the coffee shop. Major development." I found him already waiting, his expression grim but satisfied. "Natalie came home last night and suggested we take a spontaneous weekend trip. She wants to drive to the mountains, stay at some remote bed and breakfast, complete digital detox." Running away from the pressure? That's what I thought initially, but then I realized something more significant. If Natalie disappears for a weekend, Trevor will be desperate to maintain contact with her. They'll have to find ways to communicate secretly, which means more evidence and more opportunities for them to reveal their coordination.
Connor was right. Couples under stress often make desperate attempts to reconnect, and secret lovers separated by circumstances tend to take risks they would normally avoid. "There's something else," Connor continued. "I contacted our PI yesterday evening after your social media operation. He followed them after dinner and observed something interesting. They didn't go to their usual locations. Instead, they drove to a different part of town and spent 20 minutes in Trevor's car having what appeared to be a very intense discussion. Damage control meeting. They're trying to figure out whether their security is compromised." Exactly. And people who are questioning their security tend to make changes to their normal patterns. Changes create new opportunities for observation and evidence gathering. We spent the next hour refining our approach for the weekend. If Natalie and Connor went to the mountains, I would monitor Trevor's behavior while alone. People separated from their secret partners often become careless with their communications, especially when they're stressed and worried. But the most important development was psychological. Trevor and Natalie were no longer operating from a position of confidence and control. They were reactive, defensive, and increasingly paranoid. The comfortable routine that had sustained their affair for 14 months was breaking down under sustained pressure.
How much longer do you think we should maintain this campaign before moving to direct confrontation? I asked Connor. I think we're close to the optimal moment. They're stressed enough to make mistakes, but not so panicked that they'll run away completely. Maybe one more week of pressure, then we let them proceed with their revelation timeline. And when they sit us down to confess their affair and announce their plans to leave us? Connor smiled, and it was neither pleasant nor forgiving. When they do that, we'll be ready with 14 months of documented evidence, legal papers already prepared, and professional consequences already in motion. They think they're going to shock us with their revelations. Instead, they're going to discover that their victims have been 10 steps ahead of them from the beginning. As I drove home from our meeting, I felt the satisfaction of a plan proceeding exactly as designed. Trevor and Natalie had spent over a year believing they were the intelligent ones, the strategic ones, the ones controlling the situation. Very soon, they would learn how wrong they had been. And the education was going to be both comprehensive and devastating. The call came on Tuesday evening, exactly 3 weeks after our anniversary party. I was reviewing quarterly tax documents when Trevor entered the living room, his expression serious but carefully composed. He sat across from me, hands clasped, wearing the same expression he'd used when discussing major life decisions during our early marriage years. "Jessica, we need to talk. There's something important I need to tell you." I set down my papers, my face arranged in appropriate concern. "Of course. What's wrong? You look worried." Trevor took a deep breath, and I recognized the moment he'd probably been rehearsing for weeks. "This is going to be difficult to hear, and I want you to know that I never intended for things to happen this way." "Trevor, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "I've been doing a lot of thinking about our marriage, about who we've become as people, about what we both need to be happy." His voice carried practiced sincerity. "We've grown apart over the years, and I think we both know that we're not the same people we were when we got married." I leaned forward, my expression shifting to appropriate alarm. "Are you saying you want a divorce?" "I'm saying that I think we both deserve to be with people who truly understand us, who bring out the best in who we are now." Trevor's rehearsed speech continued smoothly. "I've met someone, Jessica. Someone who makes me feel alive in ways I'd forgotten were possible." The moment hung in the air, Trevor waiting for shock, tears, or emotional collapse. Instead, I sat quietly for several seconds, then reached for my phone. "That's interesting timing," I said calmly, scrolling through my contacts. "Connor and I were just discussing the same topic." Trevor's carefully composed expression cracked slightly. "Connor. Connor Walsh, Natalie's husband. You remember Connor, don't you? You attended his wedding to Natalie 3 years ago. Brought them a very expensive crystal vase, if I recall correctly." The color drained from Trevor's face as I found Connor's number and hit dial. The phone rang twice before he answered. "Hello, Jessica. Is it time?" "It's time," I confirmed, watching Trevor's growing comprehension with satisfaction. Trevor just delivered his prepared speech about finding someone who makes him feel alive. Shall we proceed with phase 3? "Absolutely. I'll be right over. Natalie should be arriving at your house any moment now." Trevor stared at me in growing horror. "What's happening? What do you mean Natalie's coming here?" I ended the call and smiled at my husband with genuine warmth for once in weeks. "Oh, Trevor, did you really think Connor and I wouldn't figure out what our spouses were doing? Did you honestly believe we'd never compare notes about your lies?" As if summoned by perfect timing, the doorbell rang. I stood gracefully and walked to the front door, opening it to reveal Natalie's shocked face. Behind her, Connor's car was pulling into our driveway. "Natalie, how wonderful to see you again so soon after our anniversary party. Please, come in. Trevor is in the living room, and I believe you two had something you wanted to discuss with Connor and I."
Natalie looked between me and Trevor, her composure beginning to fracture. "I don't understand. Why is Connor here? How did you know about your affair?" I finished pleasantly. About your couples therapy sessions with Dr. Miranda Santos? About your apartment applications for Grandview Towers? About your 14-month relationship that began while you were both married to other people? Connor entered behind Natalie, carrying a leather briefcase and wearing an expression of cold professionalism. "Good evening, Trevor. Natalie. I think we have quite a bit to discuss." Trevor stood slowly, his face cycling through confusion, fear, and dawning realization. "How long have you known?" "We've known since your anniversary party," Connor replied, settling into an armchair with deliberate calm. "The question isn't how long we've known. The question is how thoroughly we've documented your activities since then." I returned to my seat, opening my laptop with practice ease. 3 weeks, Trevor. 3 weeks of watching you lie to my face while you and Natalie planned your romantic future together. 3 weeks of documenting every restaurant charge, every secret meeting, every text message coordination. Natalie sank onto the couch beside Trevor, her hands trembling slightly. We didn't mean for it to happen this way." "You didn't mean to get caught," Connor corrected sharply. "You meant for it to happen exactly this way. Blindside your spouses with simultaneous revelations, present us with fait accompli, and walk away clean into your new life together." I returned to my seat, opening my laptop toward them, displaying the comprehensive timeline Connor and I had constructed. 14 months of systematic deception, from your first dinner at Antonelli's restaurant to your most recent apartment viewing last week. Every lie, every secret meeting, every dollar of marital assets you spent on each other. Trevor's voice was barely audible. "How did you get all this?" "Phone records, credit card statements, location data, social media analysis, private investigation services, and 3 weeks of active surveillance." Connor's tone was matter-of-fact. "Once we started working together and sharing information, the scope of your deception became quite clear." Natalie looked up sharply. "Working together? You two have been planning our response while you planned your revelation." The difference is that our planning included legal preparation, evidence compilation, and professional consultation. Your planning, apparently, consisted of choosing the right moment to destroy 2 marriages simultaneously. Connor opened his briefcase and pulled out several thick folders. "Speaking of legal preparation, these are divorce filings for both marriages, complete with asset protection orders and detailed evidence of financial misconduct. They're ready to be submitted tomorrow morning." "You can't be serious," Trevor said, his voice rising with panic. "We're completely serious," I replied. "But that's just the legal response. Connor, would you like to share what we've prepared regarding professional consequences?" Connor smiled without warmth. "Certainly. Tomorrow morning, Stratford Dynamics HR department will receive a comprehensive report documenting Trevor and Natalie's undisclosed romantic relationship, including evidence of policy violations regarding personal relationships between employees, misuse of company resources for personal activities, and fraudulent expense reporting." Natalie's face went white. "You can't do that. Our careers." "Your careers will face appropriate consequences for your professional conduct, just as your marriages are facing appropriate consequences for your personal conduct." I leaned forward, my voice gentle but implacable. "Trevor, you stood in this room 15 minutes ago and told me that you'd met someone who made you feel alive. You spoke about deserving to be with people who truly understand us. I agree completely." "Jessica, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can what? Rebuild trust after 14 months of systematic deception? Recover from the discovery that you've been living a completely separate life while I supported you emotionally and financially? No, Trevor. What we can do is proceed with dignity and appropriate consequences. Connor addressed Natalie directly. You told me last month that you wanted to focus on our marriage, maybe start thinking about having children. While you were saying those words, you were planning to leave me for another man. The level of calculation involved is breathtaking. Natalie's composure finally broke completely. We didn't want to hurt anyone. We tried to end it, but we couldn't. We love each other. You love each other so much that you built your relationship on lies, deception, and betrayal of the people who trusted you most. That's not love, Natalie. That's selfishness with romantic packaging. Trevor made one last attempt at damage control. What do you want from us? What would it take for you to reconsider the legal and professional actions? Connor and I exchanged a look of perfect understanding. We had anticipated this moment, this attempt to negotiate away consequences. We want you to experience appropriate accountability for your choices, Connor said simply. For 14 months, you've enjoyed the benefits of your affair while avoiding any real consequences. You've used our homes, our emotional support, our financial resources, and our trust to sustain your relationship. Now you get to build your relationship honestly, without the safety net of marriages you were planning to abandon anyway, without the professional positions you compromised through your conduct, without the social connections you maintained through deception. I closed my laptop and stood up. Your belongings are packed and waiting in the garage, Trevor. The locks have been changed, and you are no longer welcome in this house. Divorce papers will be filed tomorrow morning along with the HR complaint at Stratford Dynamics.
Connor stood as well. Natalie, your suitcases are in my car. I've arranged for you to stay at your sister's house until you can make permanent arrangements. Our joint accounts have been frozen, and our attorneys will handle all future communication. Trevor and Natalie sat frozen on the couch, the weight of complete exposure and coordinated consequences finally settling on them. Their carefully planned revelation had become their complete undoing. "This is happening too fast," Natalie whispered. "Can't we at least discuss?" "You had 14 months to discuss your choices," Connor interrupted. "You chose deception, manipulation, and betrayal. Now you get to live with the consequences of those choices." I walked to the front door and opened it pointedly. "Your new life together starts now. Honestly, this time, without the benefit of deceiving anyone else." As Trevor and Natalie gathered themselves to leave, Trevor made one final attempt. "Jessica, 10 years of marriage has to count for something." I looked at him with genuine sadness for the first time since our anniversary party. 10 years did count for something, Trevor. It counted enough for me to fight for the truth and ensure that your actions had appropriate consequences. But it doesn't count enough to excuse 14 months of calculated betrayal. They left together, walking toward Connor's car where Natalie's belongings waited. Through the window, I watched them drive away into their new life of complete honesty and full accountability. Connor and I stood in my living room, surrounded by the evidence of weeks of planning and preparation. The systematic exposure was complete. The legal machinery was in motion. And two people, who had spent over a year believing they were smarter than everyone else, had discovered exactly how wrong they had been. "How do you feel?" Connor asked. "Satisfied," I replied honestly. Not happy, not vindicated, but satisfied that justice was served proportional to the betrayal. "Same here. They got exactly what they chose, just not in a way they expected." As Connor gathered his materials to leave, I realized that the most unexpected outcome of this entire situation was standing in my living room. Trevor and Natalie had inadvertently introduced me to someone whose intelligence, integrity, and strategic thinking I genuinely respected. Their betrayal had destroyed 2 marriages, but it had also revealed the kind of person I could trust in the most difficult circumstances. That wasn't the outcome any of us had planned, but perhaps it was the one we all deserved. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of my new townhouse in Riverside Gardens, sunlight streaming through windows that had never witnessed Trevor's deception. The space was smaller than the house I'd shared with him, but every corner belonged entirely to me. No shared memories, no tainted associations, just clean possibilities stretching forward. The legal proceedings had concluded exactly as Connor and I had planned. Trevor's attempt to contest the divorce had crumbled when faced with 14 months of documented evidence. His attorney had advised him to accept the settlement terms rather than risk a trial that would expose the full scope of his financial misconduct. The asset division favored me significantly, particularly after the court reviewed evidence of Trevor using marital funds to support his affair. Trevor and Natalie's professional consequences had been swift and decisive. Stratford Dynamics had terminated both of them within 2 weeks of receiving our HR complaint. Their violation of company policies regarding undisclosed relationships, misuse of resources, and fraudulent expense reporting had given the company legal grounds for dismissal without severance. Trevor had eventually found work at a smaller firm in the neighboring city, but at a significant reduction in salary and responsibility. Natalie had struggled more with her reputation in Clearwater Heights' marketing community, damaged by the circumstances of her termination. But the most satisfying consequence had been watching their relationship crumble under the pressure of reality. Building a romance on deception and shared guilt had proven unsustainable when forced into the harsh light of honesty and accountability. According to mutual acquaintances, Trevor and Natalie had lasted less than 4 months living together openly. Without the excitement of secrecy and the thrill of forbidden meetings, their connection had revealed itself as superficial attraction, masquerading as deep love. Trevor had moved to an apartment across town, alone. Natalie had relocated to her sister city, starting over professionally and personally. Their grand romance, the relationship they claimed was worth destroying 2 marriages, had collapsed the moment it faced real-world pressures without the foundation of deception. I sipped my morning toffee, reviewing the final legal documents that had arrived yesterday. Trevor's attempt to reduce alimony payments had been denied, and his request for visitation rights to our shared property had been rejected. The court had been thorough in its review of his conduct, and Judge Martinez's written opinion had been particularly pointed about the consequences of marital betrayal involving financial deception. My phone buzzed with a text from Connor. "Lunch at Meridian Cafe at 1 p.m.? I have news to share." Connor and I had maintained our friendship throughout the legal proceedings and beyond. What had begun as an alliance of necessity had evolved into something genuine and valuable. We understood each other in ways that came from shared experience of betrayal and recovery. Our friendship was built on mutual respect, strategic thinking, and an appreciation for justice properly served. I arrived at Meridian Cafe to find Connor already waiting. But he wasn't alone. A woman with kind eyes and an easy smile sat across from him, and Connor stood when he saw me, his expression bright with happiness I hadn't seen since before his marriage to Natalie had imploded.
Jessica, I'd like you to meet Dr. Rebecca Stone. Rebecca, this is Jessica, the friend I've told you so much about. Rebecca extended her hand warmly. Connor speaks of you with tremendous respect. I've been looking forward to meeting the woman who helped him navigate such a difficult situation with such grace and intelligence. As we settled into conversation, I learned that Rebecca was a corporate attorney who had recently moved to Clearwater Heights to join a prestigious firm downtown. She and Connor had met through professional networking, but their relationship had developed naturally, built on shared interests and genuine compatibility rather than workplace proximity and forbidden attraction. Rebecca knows everything about what happened with Natalie and Trevor, Connor said quietly. Complete honesty from the beginning. No secrets, no gradual revelations, no hidden information. I admire how you both handled such a devastating betrayal, Rebecca said. Connor told me about your systematic approach to ensuring appropriate consequences. It must have required incredible emotional control and strategic thinking. It helped having a partner in the process, I replied, smiling at Connor. Facing that level of deception alone would have been overwhelming. Working together gave us both strength and perspective. Connor leaned forward, his expression serious. Jessica, I wanted you to meet Rebecca because she's become important to me, but also because I value your opinion.
You know me in ways that came from crisis, and you've seen how I handled pressure and difficult decisions. I studied Rebecca's face, noting the genuine warmth in her eyes when she looked at Connor, the easy communication between them, the absence of the careful performance that had characterized Connor and Natalie's public interactions. Rebecca, what Connor hasn't told you is that he's one of the most honorable people I've ever known. When faced with devastating betrayal, he could have chosen revenge, public humiliation, or destructive anger. Instead, he chose justice, proportional consequences, and rebuilding with integrity. Rebecca nodded thoughtfully. That's exactly what I've observed about him. He told me early in our relationship that he'd been married before, that it ended due to his ex-wife's infidelity, and that he learned important lessons about the kind of relationship he wanted to build in the future. Connor reached across the table and took Rebecca's hand. I learned that trust can't be rebuilt once it's fundamentally broken, but it can be built fresh with the right person and the right foundation. I felt genuine happiness watching them together. Their connection was evident, but not performative, comfortable, but not complacent. Most importantly, it was built on complete honesty from the beginning. There's something else I wanted to share, Connor continued. I've been thinking about writing a book about our experience. Not a revenge story, but a guide for people facing marital betrayal about how to respond strategically rather than emotionally. That's a wonderful idea, I said immediately. So many people in our situation react with pure emotion and end up making decisions that hurt them legally and financially. Having a framework for strategic response could help others protect themselves. Rebecca nodded enthusiastically. Connor's approach was brilliant. Document everything, build evidence systematically, coordinate legal strategy, and ensure that consequences match the scope of betrayal. It could help thousands of people avoid being victimized twice. We spent the next hour discussing Connor's book concept, and I found myself energized by the possibility of turning our experience into something that could help others. The systematic approach we'd developed could indeed provide a valuable framework for people facing similar betrayals. As lunch concluded, Connor walked me to my car. Jessica, I need to ask you something personal. Are you dating anyone? Are you ready to think about building something new? I considered his question carefully. I'm not ready yet, but I'm getting closer. I've been focused on rebuilding my individual life, establishing my consulting business, creating a home that's entirely mine. But I think about it sometimes. When you are ready, I hope you will remember what we learned about building relationships on complete honesty. You deserve someone who values transparency and treats trust as sacred. We both do. And Connor, Rebecca seems wonderful. I can see why you care about her, and more importantly, I can see that she cares about you for all the right reasons. Driving home through Clearwater Heights, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed in 6 months. The woman who had hosted an anniversary party believing in her marriage's strength no longer existed. In her place was someone harder but wiser, more strategic but also more authentic. Trevor had unwittingly given me the greatest gift possible, the opportunity to discover my own strength and intelligence under pressure. His betrayal had forced me to develop skills I never knew I possessed, and revealed capabilities I might never have discovered otherwise. That evening, I sat in my home office reviewing financial projections for my consulting business. Independence suited me. The freedom to make decisions without considering a partner's hidden agenda was liberating in ways I hadn't anticipated. Every choice was mine, every plan was honest, every relationship was built on truth. My phone rang, and I saw an unknown number with a Seattle area code. Curiosity made me answer. Jessica, this is Amanda Sullivan from Pacific Northwest Publishing. Connor Walsh provided your contact information. We're interested in discussing a book project about strategic response to marital betrayal.
I leaned back in my chair, smiling at the unexpected opportunity. I'd be very interested in that conversation. Connor mentioned you were instrumental in developing the systematic approach he's outlined in his proposal. We'd like to explore the possibility of co-authoring the book, providing both perspectives on coordinated response to spousal deception. As I scheduled a meeting with Amanda Sullivan, I realized that Trevor and Natalie's betrayal had inadvertently launched not just my personal transformation, but potentially a new career direction that could help others facing similar situations. They had thought they were so clever, building their relationship on deception and manipulation. Instead, they had created the foundation for something far more valuable: a systematic approach to justice, a framework for a strategic response to betrayal, and ultimately a way to help others protect themselves from similar manipulation. The irony was perfect. Their selfishness and deception would become the basis for helping others avoid being victimized by similar behavior. Their betrayal would be transformed into protection for future victims of marital deception. I opened my laptop and began drafting an outline for our book project. The title came to me immediately: Strategic Response: A Systematic Approach to Marital Betrayal Recovery. Trevor and Natalie had wanted to start a new life together based on destroying other people's trust. Instead, they had inadvertently launched Connor and me toward building something meaningful based on helping others protect and rebuild their lives after betrayal. Justice, it turned out, had dimensions they never could have imagined. And the best revenge truly was living well, building something valuable, and ensuring that their destructive choices ultimately served a constructive purpose. As I wrote late into the evening, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before our anniversary party: genuine excitement about the future. Not because I had punished those who wronged me, but because I had discovered my own capabilities and was using them to build something worthwhile. Trevor had been right about one thing during his rehearsed speech that night 6 months ago. We both deserved to be with people who brought out the best in who we were. The difference was that I had discovered the best in myself through facing his betrayal with intelligence and integrity. That was a gift no amount of deception could ever take away.